There's been a lot of discussion in the last few years around elected officials representing all of their constituents and representing the people's will. What's your interpretation of these concepts and your philosophy about representing the citizens of Ames?
Fourth Ward in particular is a question because Fourth Ward is a lot of students. So it's the one ward which has a lot of faculty and a lot of students in it. So representing the full population of the Fourth Ward and their interest is an important function. It shouldn't be a battle between Fourth Ward and other wards, but it's certainly representing to make sure that people in your ward are being protected, if nothing else, against actions that might limit their activity, limit what they could do, limit their quality of life. So that part is really, I think, a function of the ward you're in, because you are representing those people and you want to make sure that you protect their interests and their quality of life. Competing for resources with other wards and what gets put here and there, I think you've got to work on a balance, and it's obviously when you have representatives from each ward, that's what will happen, is you'll try and balance the resource utilization that you have amongst all of the people in Ames. And probably 90% of the questions that come up in front of City Council are citywide. They're not really, or not cross-ward questions. They're just use your best interests, their best judgment and analytical skills to come up with the right answer for people living in whatever zone you're talking about. And that's what you've got to do.
Do you believe the city's budget is at the correct balance between satisfactory costs of services and satisfactory levels of service? If not, what changes would you like to make?
I don't have any feeling that it's way out of bounds. Everybody has a different view of what services that the resources go to, but I think the general categories that things are in are quite reasonable and arguable, that it's legitimate. So I don't have major problems with any of that. I think they do. I think the council so far has done a pretty good job on that, and the city as a whole. There are probably, once you get into it, efficiencies to be had here and there, but that's a detail.
Do you think it's important for Ames to have a comprehensive land use policy plan?
Yeah, that's a question a little, because the interpretations can be done a different way in how it's implemented. There's a quote I like of Eisenhower's, he's talking about war, which you can really judge success and failure in, but he's saying plans are useless, but planning is essential. And I think he kind of can apply it to that. If you going through the planning process and looking at where you are and where the land use is and what would be the people involved in at that time, their best judgment, and going through that, getting input, I think that's very important. It's essential in coming out with a plan as such. If that plan takes on a life of its own that inhibits decisions that would otherwise improve the quality of life for the people in Ames, then that's bad. So it has more to do with how it's implemented than whether you do the planning process and come up with a plan. And we've had some cases, I think, here where it's been on the negative side. I think people get to the point where once they make a plan, they think that changing it or letting the change be had is somehow admitting a weakness or something, and they go, oh, it's our plan, we can't allow a change in that. And that, I think, gets destructive. But as long as it's looked at flexibly and you look at it and say, oh, this makes a lot of sense for the people of Ames, and there's an improvement in quality of life available by this, then it's okay. That's good.
What factors would be important to you as you might consider a request to rezone property differently than called for in that plan?
We talking about the hospital here. Yeah, that's an area where you definitely have a conflict between different parties, and there's the overall impact on the city to be considered. You know, I tend to get down to specifics, so I'm looking at something. The hospital's been the one up for discussion, and I haven't gone through the details of the budgetary stuff, but at least as an overview, that's an important commercial activity for the city. It is the medical. So you want to be fairly accommodating to that. But if it does significant damage to another segment of the city, then you've got to balance the rights of the two groups. And honestly, where this one comes down, probably allowing the expansion is reasonable. The impact on the neighborhoods is probably not immediate, but there's always a concern that it's a wedge, you know, as you start moving in and growing in. If it isn't accepted at the long range, this is really what we should be doing. There's a little bit of something possibly reneging on past agreements that worries me, but I haven't looked at detail. But you know, so that's not in any way a clear-cut activity. It's got to be evaluated. Somebody's going to be there are going to be losers in it, no matter which way you go. And it's a hard judgment to come up with how you're best overall for the city and in some form of equity and fairness for everybody involved. And I think that probably the result they've come up with falls in with that category, but I don't have the data in that case to I haven't looked carefully enough at the numbers to say for sure, but whenever that comes up, it's a rough decision.